Many years ago, I was very lucky to meet the singer Eddie Fisher. Checkered life, there's no two ways about it, but it was one of those meetings, when you're very young and you don't realize exactly what that person had done. I mean, if I'm honest, I was very aware of him because I'd always loved Hollywood and read all of those wonderful books that we all come to cherish. Eddie Fisher had, shall we say, a huge ego. There's no two ways about that. But of course, when you've been married to one of the most famous women on the planet, and that's really the now thing you're only known for, you can understand why he got a little bit annoyed and angry from time to time. But what is interesting now is there's a brand new docu-series which just come out on streaming, and it's all about Elizabeth Taylor's lost tapes. And it's a fascinating look into a Hollywood star's life. I told you I was very lucky to meet Elizabeth Taylor and call, in fact, Debbie Reynolds a friend. She was a lovely lady, came over to London many times, just a lot of fun. And her impressions were wonderful of people like Zsa Zsa Gabor. She really had got these people off. Good friends with Liberace. You could spend hours listening to Debbie Reynolds. She was a clever lady who'd done a lot of things in her career. Few setbacks, but mounted back and came back big time. Now, here's where it gets really interesting, because a lot, of course, of the family that are still remaining on Debbie Reynolds' side, because sadly, she died very quickly after her daughter, Carrie Fisher. Well, they're unhappy with this particular docu-series, and I could understand why, if I'm honest, because it is much a one-sided story, because obviously everybody's now removed, and when Elizabeth Taylor made these tapes, she truly had no idea just where they would end up. Now, these are her words and these are her thoughts, but what was interesting was her stories don't necessarily relate. You see, as Debbie told me, they did become friends in the end, and they basically teamed up and blamed Eddie Fisher. Sometimes that can happen, right, ladies? Your bottom line is you move away and you can become friends with them. You see, Elizabeth points out that she was only really that keen on Eddie simply because he'd been such a good friend to her husband at the time, who she tragically lost, Mike Todd, the entrepreneur and movie producer, So that was their connection. Now, when I met Eddie Fisher, he was coming over for a farewell tour to the London Palladium, and it's hard to imagine just what a huge star he was, but he was kind of put out that there weren't really many fans waiting outside. At this point, he's slightly advanced in his years, and even though they publicised the show, he still wasn't drawing in the crowds, and it was far from a sellout. That's show business, as we all know. But as he pointed out to me, Elizabeth Taylor came out of this actually better, even though, if you remember at the time, during the debacle of Cleopatra and her falling in love with the Welsh actor Richard Burton, going on to become one of the most powerful and famous couples in the world. If you're thinking reality TV, they were it. I think what's interesting to note is the fact that obviously Eddie had never truly got over it. But Debbie pointed out to me that, you see, she knew that Eddie was making a mistake to go and marry Elizabeth Taylor. She said to me, she told him, that he would, find himself, she would get bored of him originally, and that, if he wanted to ride it out, she was quite happy to look the other way for that particular period. Very magnanimous of her, I'm sure you'll agree. Must have been very hurtful, because she was a big star, all thanks to movies like Singing in the Rain, Tammy, all of that sort of stuff. But you see, she knew that Elizabeth Taylor had something of a reputation. She said she didn't really, wasn't annoyed, because after all, Elizabeth was the most beautiful woman at that point on the planet. Now you see, given the fact that this series has come out, the remaining family of Debbie Reynolds, and as I say, her son, have come out to defend her and the memory of their father. And rightly so, I think that should be the case. But it's interesting with all of these docus, isn't it? Because when they come out after the person's gone, it's interesting to see exactly who says what and what was it all about. You see, interestingly, a couple of days ago, Liza Minnelli has finally agreed to put pen to paper and write her autobiography. She says that she wanted to do this simply because she was sick to death of all the untruths coming out about her late mother and her father, Vincente Minnelli, and of course the brilliant dynamo of a star, Judy Garland. In particular, she said she found the Judy movie, which starred Renée Zellweger, particularly hurtful. Some might suggest, of course, it's a good payday for Liza Minnelli, and that's the reason why she's doing it. Others might suggest it's a good thing that it comes from her. But as Mickey Rooney pointed out to me, really, When a star writes their autobiography, it's their sanitized version of events, nothing to do with the truth. And as I told you before, he said to me when Lana Turner put out her book, The Lady, the Legend, the Truth, that was definitely far from the truth. He said Lana was a lady at points, but clearly she cleaned up her act by the time she wanted to tell her story. It's always fascinating and wonderful to share these Hollywood stories with you because, as I said, I was lucky enough to meet these people. And Eddie Fisher did leave an indelible mark on me because while I found him very talented, he was an abrasive man, clearly fed up by the fact that he wasn't still remembered in today's age. But that, as they often say, is show business. And even Eddie Fisher should know that. But at least, all thanks to this docu-series, his name is now once again back in the newspapers and up in lights. And that's the bit I think he would have liked. Neil Sean in the very heart of London.